Welcome back to the channel, everyone. In case you don't know me, I'm Doodleman149, and I'm your host for this look at Atomic Heart. Today I'll be taking my 4 hours of game time with this title and detailing what I see as the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is what I like and what I think works, the bad is what isn't so great and what should have been changed, and the ugly includes problems that stem from outside the game, things like industry practices that have marred the experience, etc. So let's hop in, folks. Starting off with the positives, there sure are a lot for me. I'm really enjoying the setting so far. We typically get games set in extreme environments where one ideology reigns, but something we rarely see is a game from the perspective of the world's bad guy. Russia, because the CCP just isn't the devil incarnate or anything. Having a setting where the Soviet Union didn't collapse and somehow went on to create technological marvels is something I've honestly never seen before, and it's a refreshing perspective. In terms of things I've seen before, there are definitely more than a few nods to BioShock in this game so far, but I don't see that as a bad thing. Chalamet is basically Columbia from BioShock Infinite. It even starts with a C. On top of that, there's a specific statue in the opening sequence that looks just like the Columbia statue where Elizabeth is imprisoned in Infinite. Plus, the city floats, so, There's also the inclusion of special powers. First one I got was called Shock, and that's just Shock with just a K, and it's essentially Shock Jockey from BioShock, albeit much weaker. A neat change with this is that the abilities you learn are all just tech upgrades to your glove. They aren't changing your DNA like they are in BioShock, so that was a nice deviation. Overall, being the 4th unofficial BioShock game is a good thing for me. The enemies are also appropriately tough, and they act fairly realistically for what they are. A metallic humanoid enemy should take a good pounding before going down. They shouldn't flinch or recoil when struck as they can't feel pain, and they should come at you unrelentingly because they have no self-preservation and are singularly focused on killing humans. They are appropriately difficult in my opinion, and the melee combat is fun, slow, and weighty. It felt a lot like Dead Island in terms of the heft of your strikes and the dodge mechanic. Referring back to robots that could take a pounding, the horny workbench is hilarious and uncomfortable at the same time. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out a couple of my shorts from yesterday. But the last thing I'll point out that I really like is the ease of looting. You just hold RB and glide over any containers to automatically retrieve what's inside. They even explain that the glove shrinks these items down so that you can carry basically an infinite amount of them. This is a fun, scientific explanation for a typical loot hoarding mechanic that many games have. So, while I had a lot of positives, there are also things I objectively am not a fan of with Atomic Heart. I'll get a minor one out of the way first. While I like the simplicity of the looting, like I just mentioned, it's also very bland, and there isn't really any excitement in finding anything, as there's nothing you're really strategically looking for. In terms of real problems, for one, the voice acting is not good. The few cutscenes with voice acting showcasing that the words don't always line up with the mouth movements, and they lag behind sometimes, is a little disappointing. On top of that, for a game set in the Soviet Union, there sure was a lack of Russian accents in this game. It makes no sense for me. Also, the banter Agent P3 has with his glove Charles is not amusing. Sometimes it's cringy and goes on for far too long. Speaking of things that go on for far too long, the opening segment before the title card even drops is a damned half-hour long. Like, really, guys? That's insane when everything in that half hour is just a walking simulator. Cut that down to 15 minutes without extensive segments of nothing, and the pacing will feel much better. Speaking of extensive segments, this game appears to have no loading screens aside from loading in from the main menu, but you'd be mistaken on that front. There are also some long scenes that just act as loading filler. The elevator to the twins on Chalamet is a loading area. The falling elevator when you get to the underground portion of the first area is a loading screen with looping animations. And when you black out from the rubble collapse, it's another obvious loading screen. I appreciate not having legit loading screens, but each of these parts is just as jarring and noticeable as an actual loading screen. They're just poorly covered up. The horror aspect of this game is also bad. There are segments that are meant to be scary or surprising, but so far, legitimately, only one of these has been any good at all. There is a jump scare in an outhouse early on that you can see coming a mile away. There's a soldier that gets killed in the facility that's also intended to be a jump scare and a scary moment, but the poorly animated face of the soldier and the lackluster acting of the scene really makes it unimpressive. The look of the robots also kills the horror. Sure, a blank expression can be unnerving, but when the robots have a goofy-ass little mustache as well, they're more comic relief than scary. This game is trying to emulate BioShock in a lot of ways that I like, but it falls flat in basically every horror aspect that BioShock did really well 16 years ago. Now for the ugly parts of the game that aren't directly related to the gameplay. The levels themselves seem to follow a very common rule in gaming nowadays: style over substance. There's dozens of corpses strung up in the hallway, the area is dark and dirty, but there isn't much there to actually make you scared to move forward. I've already pointed out that the look of the robots isn't scary, but their persistence is. However, when you have an area filled with 100 or so dead soldiers, and there's just 2 or 3 robots, that is insane. There's too much style, not enough substance in most areas. While I praise the game for basically being Bioshock 4, it also seems to follow some of the tropes of that game that almost make me positive of what the twist, if there is one, will be. I won't detail it here, check out my short on it from yesterday to see if you agree, but this leads to another industry weak point: recycled ideas. The settings and characters may, so far, be original creations, but the story beats so far are not all that inspired. And the last ugly isn't actually a dig at the game in the slightest. I'd rather turn our attention to the scary real world for a minute. Or actually the world of the internet, so, way worse. While not to the degree that people were hating each other for playing Hogwarts Legacy, there are still people who say that playing this game means we support Russia in the war in Ukraine. Some are even saying we're like Stalin, much the same way that people were saying Hogwarts Legacy players were supporting genocide. Now, come on people, it's a game. Don't be stupid. Play it or don't. People aren't good or bad for playing a video game. But don't even get me started on all the thirsty nerds out there simping for the Robo-Twins, because society continues to spiral downwards. And so there you have it, folks, the good, the bad, and the ugly of Atomic Heart. I think the gameplay and setting are the strongest parts of this title. Both are very solid and interesting to learn. The weakest point of the game, aside from the eon-spanning intro, has to be the voice acting. I don't think I've ever played a game where I actively wish the protagonist was silent. It's not on the line delivery per se, it's the lines themselves. The worst outside influence, though, has to be the style over substance part. While I'm still pretty early in the game, the facility is largely empty, aside from the gory scenes and corpses everywhere anyway. There's combat, but lots of times it feels few and far between. Despite my negative comments, I still thoroughly enjoy this game overall. The goods far outweigh the bads of this title, at least for me anyway. As I said in my first impressions video, if you're like me and you love Bioshock, you will love this game too. So that's my 2 cents. How about you? What do you think of Atomic Heart? Have you even played it? Do you know it existed before today? Did I convince you to try it? Whatever you'd like to share in the comments, I am all ears. I always respond to every comment, so don't be afraid to share your feelings. If you like this video and want to hear more from me, then you should subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on anything in the future. Also, if you think you have a friend who might enjoy Atomic Heart, I'd appreciate if you recommend this video to them. Anywho, I hope you're having a great day, and I hope the rest of your week is great as well. I've been your host, Doodleman149, and until next time, I will see you later.